Greetings once again. It's a pleasure to be back. And today I'm going to cover a couple of discussions. And this particular one that I'm going to start with is business development in the biopharmaceutical industry. I remember the last video that I did was on business development and what's the role of a pharmacist, how can a pharmacist get into such spaces. And just from the background of the discussion that we had was that business development is around you as a professional getting into the industry and understanding how can you help the organization or the company that you're working with make money in doing the business and make it be sustainable. Therefore, it means what activities can you institute? What activities can you bring into the fold? And what strategies do you have for that to be able to drive value in the company or the organization that you're working for? Then as a follow-up to that, I got a request from a friend asking about what would be the scope of business development in the biopharmaceutical industry. And this is actually was triggered by a particular call, or rather a job advertisement that was trending on the different links groups that we engage with. And it was like, well, how do I become the business development professional in this biopharmaceutical company? And what would be the scope of that kind of a job? So I went into some research on it and actually linked it to what I had discussed in the previous discussion. And I decided that this is going to be the video that I'm going to share at this particular moment in terms of business development in the biopharmaceutical industry. So in this case, when I talk about biopharmaceutical company industry, it would be linked to one, research and development companies. We have biological products that are being developed, let's say, for example, the biotherapeutics or biosimilars, whichever scope they have a biological component. Companies that are working into that space. Pharmaceutical companies producing pharmaceutical products, technologies, diagnostic companies, medical technologies companies, generic pharmaceutical companies that are just producing the generic pharmaceutical products, and distributors of the same products and technologies. So if you're a pharmaceutical company, pharmaceutical distributorship, wholesaler, and all the spectrum in terms of health products and technologies. So this is what we are looking at in terms of the scope of work that a business developer would be required to do. And therefore, when we talk about this, the scope of work, what is there, what does this person get to do, and how does that come about? So that's the scope of my discussion today. And on that account, then I'll get into the gist of it. One thing that we have to understand, as I had earlier mentioned and earlier indicated, is that as a business developer, the company believes that it is you who is going to do the work. It is you who understands the dynamics of the industry and is going to shape strategies and intervention that are going to enable them make business out of that particular line of work. So for you to be able to do that, the first thing when you, let's say, for example, you've just seen an advert from that pharmaceutical company, let's say call it Company X. Company X is advertising for a business development role. So as a pharmacist, as an individual who wants to take up that role, you need to ask yourself, what are the different product offerings? What is the product portfolio for this particular pharmaceutical company? Once you know their product offering, then you're in a better position to know how are you going to engage with them and what are you going to offer them as a professional in your services. What do they deal in? If they're dealing in medicines, then you need to understand what kind of medicines. Let's say, for example, their cardiovascular disease products, with their diabetic products, endocrinology products, the anti-infectives generally, communicable diseases. So you need to know what is the product portfolio. If they're dealing with diagnostic products, look at it from which diagnostic products do they deal with? Are they the rapid diagnostic kits that patients are actually allowed to use by themselves? Do they need, like, say, for example, the rapid diagnostic kit, but still used within the healthcare system where a nurse would be required, or a pharmacist at the point of care, let's say, for example, community pharmacy? Or are these advanced diagnostic equipment that need to be in a hospital setup? Once you understand that dynamic of it, then you're now able to make a decision on how to position yourself as a business developer. You need to understand what does the company deal in? What are the product offerings? Whether it's a product or service, you need to know. But in this case, when I'm talking about the biopharmaceutical industry, majorly you're focusing on pharmaceutical products, diagnostic products, medical devices, and all that. So once you've understood that scope of the services that they're offering, then you now make the next move. You need to understand the market. And understanding the market, if I'm dealing with a biopharmaceutical company that is producing, let's say, for example, they produce a whole range of products, from cardiovascular products, renal metabolic products, they have oncology cancer products, they have communicable diseases, patient products, anti-infectives. So when I understand that, the next phase for me is to understand what particular line of work am I going to be targeting. If these are products that are, let's say, for example, have been dedicated to drive business development in access for these products, and these products are majorly consumed in which areas? If they are, like say, for example, the innovator molecules, then I need to understand what market has the financial capability to purchase these products. Which hospitals normally buy them in the current dynamic? You need to understand the baseline, and that is where you are starting off. If I'm dealing with, let's say, for example, diagnostic equipment, then I need to understand who buys my diagnostic equipment. If they are advanced diagnostic equipment, then it means generally it's hospitals. Then I need to know how many hospitals do I have in the geographical scope within which I'm supposed to serve. That is my territory. Once I understood that territory better and I know what needs to be delivered in that kind of a space, then I need to ask myself, how many of them already have the diagnostic, or how many of them have alternatives? Because if somebody has an alternative to that, if I'm going to drive that kind of business from their end, I need to understand, are they willing to change? What are the preferential factors that are in place? Those are key things that I need to understand, I need to know. Then beyond knowing the dynamics of the market and understanding who are the users of your product, then you need to understand who purchases the product. The purchase is about who bears the financial burden. If I'm dealing with pharmaceutical products, let's say medicines, and our main market is the government, then I need to know, as the government, let's say, for example, in a Kenyan dynamic, Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, is the key organization that takes the medicines. Do they pay by themselves? Then if they do pay, we need to understand it is them who are paying. If it's in the private sector, then you understand the hospital will pay, but with the hope that the end consumer, the end patient they are treating, will be able to buy that medicine, will be able to pay for that medicine, whether it's through insurance and whether it's going to be out-of-pocket payment. So you need to understand who is paying for the service or for the product that I am selling. Once you know that, you are able to target knowing that if my business development, let's say, for example, I'm going to a private hospital, this private hospital has the capability to buy this product because we understand the clientele that they serve in the market. These are patients, they have, let's say, for example, they have private insurance or they have the financial muscle to pay out of pocket. Even if it's an innovator product, they are able to afford that cost. So therefore, in that case, I would be targeted in reaching out to that facility because I know their consumer, their end consumer has the ability to finance that care. Or if it's on insurance, this product is among the ones that actually are listed under the insurance scheme that most of the clients are using. Or if it's the government in terms of their budgeting cycle and their affordability of medicines have actually listed it under the Kenya Essential Medicines list, and therefore it meets the criteria because normally in procurement cycles, there is the essential medicines list that will be evaluated. And as a business developer, if you are driving a product uptake and you're not focusing on what is recommended and what is being used and what are the factors that are driving that use, then you'll not be able to make a sale. And if you're not able to drive that sale and that conversion of your activities to revenue, then you're not doing your job. You're failing at it and failing excellently. So those are the key things that we also have to understand better. Then the next thing, once you understand who is paying for them, you need to also know who is making the purchase decision and who informs that purchase decision. So once you know that who is making the decision and who informs that purchase decision, you're able to know who do I need to approach and who do I need to engage in. Let's say, for example, you're working as a business developer. You know that definitely the purchase decision will be made. Let's say, for example, it's an institution. There is the Medicines and Therapeutic Committee in a hospital. That is the committee that will make a purchase decision whether that product is going to be bought or not because of their different factors. And that is generally kind of a board of an organization. So are you able to reach out to them and build a case for why your product would make a case? That would be good for you. And the other key thing that you need to know, before we get to the Medicines and Therapeutic Committee, that is a board that is evaluating what options are available, there are people who normally use it. If you're dealing with a diagnostic equipment, you know that there's a physician or a clinician somewhere who uses this equipment, a radiographer. Are you able to actually champion your medical representatives or your agents who are reaching out to them, the salespeople, to converse with them and let them know what benefits do they have in using your device, when using your medicines, in using your diagnostic equipment? Once they know that and they understand what are the current trends in the market, and that is why one other thing that we need to know is we need to be appraised of the market dynamics and the insights that are happening so that when you're having a conversation, you're not going to recommend a medical equipment that was used in the 1990s, 1980s. You're looking at what is the most advanced and what are the key features that are coming in. Then once you understand that and you have a device that meets that criteria, you're going to argue for it to that particular decision maker or decision influencer because being they're the users, there's no way they'll get at the equipment that does not work for them. So once you're able to have those engaged, you engage with the respective members of the board and look at how do you build a case for your product and how do you facilitate that. If you have a buying user, actually a willing user of the product, and the willing user engages with the decision makers, chances are very high your product will be adopted and actually taken in as equipment to be used, or whether it's a medicine, your medicines will be procured and stocked into the pharmacies, and therefore the patients will be able to use them to derive the benefit that they need to. So you need to understand the market, and you need to understand who is making the financial decision and what makes them make that informed decision. So you get to influence the particular driving factors towards that. So that is another key thing. And then another thing that you need to understand, if you've known if the payment is, let's say, for example, it's me as a patient, I'm going to pay the medicine, or it's insurance that are paying it, what are the financing options? Because at the end of the day, the hospital will buy from you before the patients pay for it. So what are the payment or financing options are available to the facilities that you're engaging with? And oftentimes what happens is you find a hospital would want to buy your med equipment, but they're not able to buy it because they don't have that cash to be able to make that transaction. So can you ask yourself, can you negotiate from a company perspective to have higher purchase options? Can you negotiate on financing options with other stakeholders? And when you talk about financing options, it would be like you're partnering with a financial institution like a bank who is willing to pay for these in terms of a credit facility, but then they'll get their money recouped from the whole health facility in a staggered measure. That would be good for you. So you'd offer credit facilities. And actually, I've noticed that some of the different companies that are venturing into the healthcare space, whether in diagnostics or even in the pharmaceutical industry, they're coming with financing solutions and financing options where they're partnering with business or financial institutions like banks. And these banks are now financing the trade and actually movement of products. And in that case, it means the potential client, even if they didn't have the money at that particular moment, are able to raise that money and are able to use the product and pay for it over time. And that is where you also need to understand what are the probable bottlenecks. If they didn't have the financing, can you engage with stakeholders to provide that available financing that they would need? If you are able to do that, then it means now you can say, I'm going to have my medical representative and agent reach out to the specific people who influence the final decision on the use of the product. That is key. Once you know that, you also play your role in terms of engaging with the people at strategic levels. And the other thing that you need to acknowledge is, even from a policy standpoint, there are certain lists. I talked about essential medicines list. As a business developer, you need to understand what government policies, frameworks, and strategies influence whether your products will be used in the market or not being used at all. And if you're not able to influence those decisions, it means the policies and the instrument that will be in place will not be in line with, in tandem with your business operations. If they're not in tandem, you're having a product that is obsolete, that is not needed in the market, you have no value doing working for that company because you're not giving them the results that they hope for. So you need to ask yourself, which company am I going into? What is their product portfolio? Is there a need in the market? And once there's a need, who are the users of this product? Who purchases or pays for this product? Who makes the purchase decision? And what are the financing options to ensure there's that revenue transaction, movement of cash between them to you? And then who can you partner with to ensure the ecosystem works best? And that is how you need to look at all the business development activities as an individual working into that kind of an ecosystem and ensuring you deliver value for the company that you're working with. And then one thing you need to acknowledge is your place as a business developer is one, to do market analysis, proper market analysis, not the market analysis that you'll do at the back of the desk and finish everything. You need to interact with the market and understand what are the concepts they have. Therefore, you need to be the intelligence person. You need to get that intelligence from who needs it, who has it, and where it moves for you. Then you need to make informed decisions based on the intelligence that you've gained. And once you've developed, make informed decisions, then that intelligence is giving you interventions that you now design as strategy. And the strategy can be short-term, can be long-term, but it also has key performance indicators, knowing that if I'm going to do, let's say, for example, if I'm going to have 10 or 5 medical representatives that are going to interact with different physicians, they're going to targeted physicians, not every physician, because those targeted physicians are the people who have a need for that product, who have a clientele base or a patient population who deals with them, who can find value in that medical product. So that is what you need to look at. Then once you make that targeted intervention, you know It would be, let's say, for example, a 6 months engagement with them in different activities, whatever is needed, but that will translate to revenues in terms of enlisting of your product, let's say, for example, into the essential medicines list for that hospital or even the formulary, whichever way it goes, that would be good for you because that is the first entry point. Then two, at the procurement cycle, what are the costing? What are the different price advantages that you can offer to the patient? Because at the end of the day, the cost of your products will influence whether people use them or not compared to the alternatives. So can you look at what are the different price level that you can offer? What are your supply constraints and supply timelines? Because if you give a good product into the market and your supply chain is already affected, then nobody will use it. If nobody uses it, you have no business. And that business is influenced by making the product available, getting people to want to use it. So create the demand creation. As a business developer, you need to look at what interventions and what options do I have that can drive demand creation. And once the demand is already there, then you now look at how do I optimize the supply chain? And that is where, as a business developer, you are at the intersection between the end consumers from a business marketing perspective, but you're also from the supply chain looking at how do we make the product available in the market and how do we inform those insights. If we meet those, you as a business developer, you'll be thriving at your job because there's a demand for your products, there's a optimal supply, and therefore you are able to make transactions because you've created the ecosystem that makes that work for you. I hope that clarifies and that helps whoever was keen in getting into this space. And I encourage most of us to take opportunities because that is where we can make a difference because we're bringing products that have value to the end consumer. We're bringing products that have business sustainable in terms of the business perspective because if you're able to make money, you're able to produce more. If you're able to produce more, you're keeping that cycle effective and optimal. That is what we hope for. If you enjoyed these kind of discussions, please subscribe to the channel, engage, let's like and comment and also share with your colleagues. Let's learn together and build ourselves for the future that we hope for and wish for. Let's create it together. Thank you so much. See you next Sunday.